I'm Captain Blair Wiggins. I'm here on the Rowland podcast. Going to talk a little clams today and everything else that we're doing up here in the Space Coast.
Blair, what's going on, man? Good morning. The Mogan Man himself.
How are you? Been a minute.
I'm doing great, man. I got to see at ICAST the Mogan Man. Where did the Mogan Man come from?
Well, it started back when I was a kid. We didn't know what to call fish. We couldn't say, hey, it's, we had to come up with our own slang living in Cocoa Beach, being surfers and stuff growing up over there. We had our own language, and somehow Mogan came out, and it just kind of stuck with us. It's something that all the kids started using, and, I think I'm the only one that kind of kept it around, but.
Well, you've always been known as the Mogan Man. And it served you well. When we were at ICAST, we got to run into one another at the Starbright booth, and I thought that I was doing pretty good by saying that I think it was my 23rd ICAST there or something like that. And then you said, "Well, I go back even further." What was the city you said ICAST was in?
It was my first ICAST was the last ICAST that was in Chicago.
Chicago.
Yeah,
that's before my time, man.
I think that was in 99 or 98 or 99.
Yeah. What took you to ICAST the first time?
Actually pushing the Addictive Fishing show.
Mm-hmm.
We had shot a pilot, and it was a little late, but we got a couple of sponsors. I think Fenor was our first sponsor, and kind of got us off the ground. That was back when they were in West Palm, many moons ago.
Yeah. That company has taken has changed hands a few times since then.
Oh yeah, definitely, and it's wild to see how many companies come and go, stick around, come back, and over the years.
The Fenor brand was such a strong brand. I mean, with all through the history of sport fishing, they did such a good job with that brand, and then it kind of went the other way for a little while, and then kind of a resurgence of it. So when you went to ICAST the first time pushing Addictive Fishing, what was the first year that you were on the air? Do you remember?
I think 98 or 99 was our very first year.
Wow. That was a great show, man. That was really a great show.
Oh, it was a lot of fun to do, and it took us all over the country, all over the world, really. We went down to Brazil and shot some shows, and Mexico, off the coast of California, up in Oregon. It was a neat time.
What do you think your fondest memory of Addictive Fishing is?
Oh, wow. There's so many, it's so hard to choose. I mean, after you've been on the air for 25, 26 years now, there's so many that it blends. But the Brazil show that we did, we were down in Brazil for a week, and it's still going on. I'm doing the Blair Wiggins Outdoors. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit. But just got back from Alaska, and it was that was a trip of a lifetime. Never been out there. And
you had not been to Alaska before? That was your first trip?
That was my first trip to Alaska.
Wow! And where'd you go?
Ketchikan.
Okay.
I've become friends down here with a couple of retirees that duck hunt. We've been duck hunting the past few years, and Jeff Cranick, he owns the Coastal Sportsman Charters up here, but he set up a trip for us. One of his old outfitters up there, he used to go up there and guide, and just, man, what a trip! The halibut, the cod, and everywhere you point your camera, you don't have to be a professional photographer out there.
I know.
Anywhere you point the camera, you're going to have a golden shot. It's unbelievable.
Alaska is one of those places that, I mean, you get there and you feel so small. It's such a huge state, and then you see one little thing, and you're like, oh my God, there's lifetimes that you could of exploring for that particular species or that type of whatever you're doing, halibut fishing or whatever. And then you learn about next day you go up in a river, and you're salmon fishing, you're trout fishing. It's like, how much of this is there? And it's like so much. I felt so small in Alaska, but
oh yeah,
it's one of those places too where you go there and you're like, I think I could live here.
Oh yeah, for 3 months out of the year anyway.
Yeah, right. Did you get down to Homer?
No, we did everything right there in Ketchikan. I mean, there's so much to do. We went out halibut fishing in a few different spots, along with the rockfish and cod. and got a nice lingcod too. But we stuck right around Ketchikan there. We didn't have to go anywhere because
Yeah, no, you
we were there
definitely
two
don't.
days of travel, so we had 8 days in Ketchikan, and every day was full. When we came back, everybody had the Ketchikan crud, so we were in bed for about 2 weeks after that.
Oh man.
It was bad,
You
and then
think you
had to.
got that on the way back or while you were there?
No, one of the Jim Ross's wife, I think she came down with it first. She was out there with Jim and Jeff and his wife and my wife. We all took like it was a family trip, but she had it first, and then Jim got it, then Carrie got it, then I got it, then Jim got it. It was just, and everybody was on it for 2 weeks.
Mm, mm.
But
Wow.
it was worth every cough.
Yeah. And were you able to bring back some Alaskan seafood with you?
Yep, between all of us, I think it was about 200 pounds that we brought back.
Nice. That's a great trip. That's a
Yeah.
fantastic trip. So that's on Blair Wiggins Outdoors. Tell me about that show.
Well, Kevin and I, after 22 years, 23 years, kind of parted ways, and my son stepped up. I sent him to school back after he graduated high school to go TV production, and finally was able to hire him to come on and produce the show. And he's really coming into his own this year. He's got a lot to work with, and he's doing a lot. I'm getting texts from people that are, "Hey man, the shows are really looking good now." So
I love it. How
so
does it
hopefully
how
all that college tuition's paying off.
yeah, yeah, for sure. How do you like working with your son?
Oh, it's great because the years with addictive fishing and doing the redfish trails, all the tournaments and the Dick's Grand openings, everything I was doing, I was gone for most of the year, 10 and a half months out of the year. I didn't get to spend much time, family time at home. So the time I get to spend with him now is golden. I wish I could have had all that time back, but hindsight's 2020, like they say.
Yeah,
But
that's awesome.
it's great. It's great working with him now.
That's really fantastic. And then one of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about is the Clam project. So, in your spare time, sounds like you don't have a lot of spare time, but in your spare time, somehow you've managed to plant and help to plant millions and millions of clams. Tell me about how. Well, first of all, we need to set the scene of why this is necessary. So, what was the problem to begin with, and how did that happen?
Well, my my look on on what happened to the Indian River Lagoon, basically up here, we had a commercial clamming problem first off because I saw actually billions of clams come out of the Indian River in the 2000s, and the more clams that came out of the water up around Titusville, and then they started migrating and going to other parts of the river. But the more clams I saw coming out of the river up there, the dirtier the water got, and the the freeze back 2010, 2011 killed so many fish up here. It was incredible how many fish. I would literally say 60% of the fish, and not just the fish. There was turtles, there was manatees that died. There was all sorts of stuff that died up here from the freeze. And as all the dead stuff started decaying its nutrients for the water, there was an estimated 9.2 billion clams that were taken out of the Indian River Lagoon system, and there was nothing to filter out the brown algae that was feeding off all the nutrients, just like dumping fertilizer in the water. There was nothing to filter out that brown algae, so it just exploded and it turned our water black for about 5 years, and it wiped out our grass. There was no sunlight getting down, and uh, I think we did a podcast right when it was starting, and it where was I here?
We're about the podcast right when the Blackwater was starting.
Okay. But right when all that black water was there, that's when I got together with CCA, and basically I had a vision of putting clams back in the water to help filter out all that brown algae to get our clean water back. And I didn't know what to do, so I got together with Lisa Fitzgerald and from CCA, and she got a meeting put together with the DEP. The God, let me start that one over again. Sorry about that. She got a meeting together with FWC, DEP, Whitney Labs, University of Florida, and we basically figured out a way to start putting clams back into the water. And back then it was like, we'll grow the clams to a certain size and we'll throw them in. And it's pretty neat to see what it's graduated to these days. There's a lot more partners involved in it, and I mean a lot of partners that are getting this thing going along with CCA. We got Duke Energy. We've our last donation from Duke Energy was $50,000, and CCA matched us with $50,000. And the year before that, it was a $150,000 big donation. That was with some of the banquets that we've done too as well. We're just, the money that's coming in is going right back to the clams, and it
Mm-hmm.
shows. We just surpassed 96 million clams that we put back into the estuary.
Wow. So, had anyone ever done a clam restoration project like this anywhere in the world that you could look to and get any kind of,
You know,
you know,
everywhere I looked as far as a clam restoration project, there was really nothing going on in Florida or anywhere that I could find around. But I did stumble on one that was going on in Maryland as far as a restoration. I could get all the information on how to grow them commercially, for the
mm-hmm.
for the market, but there was really nothing except the one up in Maryland. And then Todd Osborne, he's been the brains behind it from Whitney Labs up there in St. Augustine. He's been the brains behind it. Him and the growers up there have really figured out how to get the clams back into the river, from growing them from up to this size to what we're doing now, which is actually releasing them with a drone. Uh,
Really?
oh yeah, it's it's
So tell
it's
me about how it first started, because a lot of people aren't going to be familiar with this. So the original idea was that you would have to grow them to a certain size and then place them probably by hand back in the river or wherever you're putting them. And so tell me about how that started.
Well, it started by cutting through a lot of red tape. If we were able to find a couple of clams or enough clams naturally that were still here, we would be able to use those to spawn and not have to go through all sorts of red tape to get out of area clams approved. If that's in a
Mm-hmm.
nutshell, that was it. So I sent the guys up to areas in Mosquito Lagoon and the Indian River up there to look for clams. It took them like 30 days to find enough clams up there to spawn. So that's how we were able to get the first clams to Whitney Labs for them to spawn. And they did the research up there, putting the music down right, changing the temperature, and making it just right for the clams to spawn. And once they figured that out, it's just repeat and repeat and repeat. And that's how we're able to get the project started. And with all that comes the areas that we need to grow the clams out to a certain size, or if we're growing them in the raceways. When we first started growing them, we would grow them out to the size of like a quarter. And it took so much more money to grow them to that size and then dig them up and then bring them out and replant them. It was, you're looking at, a big U-Haul moving truck size for 350, 400,000 clams. And nowadays, we figured out that if we overcome the predation out there, we have this flying deer feeder, I call it. We're able to release 4 to 6 million clams at a time. They're seed clams, but our percentage of mortality is it's when we're releasing them by hand and growing them to a certain size, it costs us like $1 per clam. It gets down to about 10 cents per clam when we're doing them seed clams, and it's so much more cost effective because when we do them 350,000, we got about a 70% survival rate. When we do them millions at a time, it's like a 13 to 17% survival rate. So we've got a lot more surviving clams when we're doing them with the drone
Wow,
these
and those
days.
things can just they can just find a way to bury themselves and start living wherever.
Yep. Yeah, well, what's cool about the process that we're doing now is that everything eats a clam when it from eggs to fertilization till it's a veliger, a little worm that kind of squiggles along in the water. Everything's eating a clam up until it's a good sized quahog clam, where nothing can eat it. But you get the big stingrays, they can still eat those big ones, but not as many.
Mm-hmm.
But when we put them in the drone now and release them, we're giving them about a 9 month head start. They already have a hard shell, and as soon as they hit the water and hit the bottom, they bury in the sand and start filtering.
Hmm.
And there's so much that I've learned from a clam. You know, everybody says, well, why didn't you do oysters? You know, you have so many people doing oyster projects around. I'm like, well, I saw oysters die out of here. You know, well, back in the 80s, well, I wouldn't say naturally, it was from, you know, stormwater and predation and all that, and the commercial oyster guys that came in and took all the beds. But kind of like what happened to the clams. But the reason I did the clams is that's what I saw come out last.
Hmm.
Sorry about all that shaking.
That's interesting. So one of the things that you just said there was that it took them 30 days to find enough clams, even with you and probably information from lots of other fishermen about where you've seen clams. It took them 30 days to find enough to start this project. Tell me what it looked like when you were a kid in there.
Oh man, it was a paradise. You know, like they say, a paradise don't stay a paradise forever. It the grass beds. It was tough to find. For an example, I didn't know what a pothole was. Everybody knows what a pothole is. It's an
Right.
area in the grass where there's, you know, a patch of sand. There were literally hardly any potholes when I was a kid. I mean,
Wow.
so much sand. I mean, so much grass around. You know, and then, you know, you could find the little potholes where the fish were, but you really didn't have to go far to find fish when I was a kid. That's why a lot of people ask me when I started the show back in the 90s, they say, you know, where have you traveled to fish? I'm like, I'm nowhere. I've got, you know, 14, 15 pound sea trout here. I've got 40, 50 pound redfish. You know, offshore, we've got all the migrating pelagics that go up and down. Don't really need to go anywhere. Only thing that, you know, and when I grew up, it was always catching fish for the food table.
Hmm.
So everybody always says, "You ever catch a bonefish?" I was like, "No, I never really had interest in a bonefish, but you know, now I do." But and all what I called the glamour fish.
Right.
What y'all got down in the Keys?
Yeah, but I mean,
But
it's so good. Like, why go anywhere?
no,
Like,
yeah, it was unbelievable. But now is I'm trying to get it at least halfway back to what it was with the Clam
and so
project.
with the Clam project and other things that have probably helped with the water quality there too. What's the state of the Mosquito Lagoon, Indian River Lagoon now? Indian River Lagoon.
Sorry, hold on. Right now, everything's looking pretty good. I was in the Indian River last week. I'm setting actually blue crab traps out now, and
Mm.
having some blue crab from the river once again because it's nice and clean. And I actually saw a couple of file fish in the river that I haven't seen in many years now, not since the freeze. And
Really?
I'm sure they've been out there, but just to see one, I actually filmed it and put it up on I think it was on my Instagram site, but. It was a file fish, and there's a lot of things. I haven't seen a seahorse yet. I'm still waiting to see those. When I was a kid, we used to pull the crab traps up, and there'd be 8 or 10 seahorses in your crab traps, and that was in the
Wow.
Banana River. But
Wow. And then that 2010 2011 freeze. How cold did it get, and how long did it stay cold enough to do that
um,
much damage?
it stayed below freezing for many hours during the night, and it got barely above freezing for almost a week. I
Wow.
remember I was hunting up in the Panhandle with Billy Henderson, as a matter of fact, and we were on his lease, and there was puddles on the ground, and as we were going over the puddles, they were crunching because they were frozen solid. It was 19 degrees at 1 o'clock in the afternoon in the woods. So
Wow.
basically, that was pretty chilly. And you know, Stephen Palomini actually called me up, and he was at Boca Grande Pass, and he said, "Blair, I got bonefish coming by the boat," but
What? In Boca Grande Pass?
they were all belly up.
Oh,
That was after the freeze, because
wow.
y'all got
But
hit. Yeah,
Boca Grande in Key West.
yeah,
Yeah.
Boca Grande, Key
So,
West.
and they were just, and he was seeing just bonefish just floating by.
Yeah, they were froze belly up, and just you know, he said it's a shame. You know, when that was back in 2010. That was quite a while ago.
It was a while ago. It really did affect the fishing in the Keys a lot with the bonefish, and I guess that's the freeze that really affected Isla Morada. It really changed the landscape of Isla Morada bone fishing because you shot shows there, you caught those fish. There were massive. world record size fish every time you went out. I mean, it wasn't
Yes, they
like,
were.
I mean, that was the craziest thing. It was like you would see a world record fish every day you went out there. It was just a matter of could
Every,
you catch them? Like, you know what I mean? It was really
yeah, it
an
was.
incredible fishery.
Yeah, they didn't get that big being dumb. And the one thing that was cool was there at the Lorelei right downtown. A lot of people were like, "Why does And I didn't figure this one out. Somebody told me, but why there was so many big bonefish there, and it wasn't you know too long before I started guiding, everything started catch and release. But down there, you used to catch them, bring them back to the Lorelei, weigh them, and let them go right there at the Lorelei. So every fish that was released, you know, kind of hung around there if the food source was there.
Yeah, you had the best guides and the best anglers going all over the Florida Keys and bringing all the fish back to the same place for years
Yep.
and years and years. That has to be a big part of why they were there.
Yeah.
But then, they kind of disappeared for a while, and it's rebounding now. But an interesting thing happened is the bone fishing in Key West got good after that, like really good.
Yeah, I actually
And
went down there and caught some on fly. And if I
yeah,
can catch them on fly,
yeah. But I don't know. I mean, those kind of things, that's obviously a natural occurrence where, like, some of the things what you're talking about with the clams, about the overfishing of the clams, and then that being combined with a natural thing. That's where we're getting some real big problems, especially with the water quality and stuff like that. Like you'll have some natural factors, and then you'll have man-made factors that are exponentially increasing the effects of a
of,
natural
yeah, of the natural, and
thing.
that's what a lot of people are finally starting to understand up here. And unfortunately, it's taken a couple of fish kills, and we're actually having a little fish kill. Hopefully, it's not gonna be a big fish kill, but in Banana River right now, we're having a little fish kill over there because of just some brown tide,
Hmm.
and yeah, but
Now,
hopefully
do you think
hopefully
that
that's going
that's
to
a
be a little
natural?
confined. Yeah,
In
it's
your lifetime of fishing, have you seen that come and go? And
not as frequent as it's been in the past few years. I mean, when I was a kid, if we had a fish kill, it was due to too many fish in the canal and they sucked out all the oxygen.
mm,
And then you had, it was bait fish. They'd come to a dead end canal and it was usually pogies, and they
hmm
were all like this big, and they would just suck out all the oxygen, and you'd have a big fish kill that way. But as far as the redfish and stuff dying, I don't remember that as a kid, no,
hmm.
ever.
And
And like you said, with so many people moving here now, everybody wants a green lawn, and the fertilizer compounded with the spring rains that we get. Everybody fertilizes, and you get the spring rains and you get the fertilizer that rushes in, and you compound that with a red tide or a brown tide, it turns into a black tide real quick if there's nothing there to filter it out.
now, um, do you think that the clams can help with the fertilizer problem?
They can take out a lot of nitrogen, but what a clam will do is it'll put it in the shell, so it actually becomes concentrated in the shell. And to get it out of the ecosystem, you actually have to harvest the clam, and that's one of the things that we're looking at doing down the road once we get enough clams out there, is be able to harvest an area, reseed it, and then pull the nutrients out,
That's
or
interesting.
not the nutrients, but the bad stuff out that they
So,
basically store in their shells.
how long has it taken you to kind of get a? I mean, that seems like you and all the people, Todd Osborne and other people that are working on this are like starting to get a more comprehensive understanding of what's going on. Like when you start talking about is pulling nitrates out, but it's storing them in the shell, and then we're going to need to harvest those eventually. That seems like a much better understanding than what you might have had when you first started this project. What other
Um,
things have you learned?
I could go on and on. How long we got on this
We
podcast?
got as much time as you want.
I could go on and on. Yeah, and golly, one of the main reasons I chose clams is because it was the last thing I saw that come out. But I have of the water before it really went downhill. But one of the main reasons that I kind of chose clams, and uh, it's a cool little deal. What a clam does is when it's filtering and feeding, it's constantly pulling in, excuse me, it's constantly pulling in all the bad stuff, and it's feeding on that. And then what it does, it coagulates, its spent stuff, and instead of spewing it out, its poop in the water column, it'll actually poop it out into the mud or into the sand. And if it's near grass, it actually helps the grass because it becomes fertilizer for the grass. Now, what an oyster does, it poops it out into the water column, and there's some organisms that eat it, but it's not as beneficial to the environment. Another thing, a clam, and I could go on and on with
I
facts.
want you
Another
to.
thing,
Everybody needs to learn like
when
what all about a clam. Like this
yeah,
is
when
interesting.
you see a clam bed, you usually see a lot of pinfish around a clam bed and a lot of
Okay.
little minnows because when a clam sticks its flute up, it's hosed to filter. The fish kind of use that as a food source and pick it off, and it's also beneficial for the clam because it keeps its little spout nice and clean, and it doesn't. If you see a clam that's got its spout and it's all black and corroded and looks kind of nasty, there's usually no pinfish around in that area because it's not helping the clam keep that
Huh.
clean. That's another thing I learned.
Okay.
I mean, but just so many facts. And when a clam's done feeding, a clam keeps filtering and filtering and filtering, and it'll coagulate cyanobacteria that's too small for fish to feed on or for shrimp to feed on. So what it does, it coagulates it into a ball and spits it out on the floor. And it's a ball, basically protein that a shrimp will come up and eat, or a pinfish will come up and eat. Any fish will come up and eat because it's a food source for them. Once again, instead of into the water column, and it constantly feeds. And when an oyster's done feeding, it basically stops and it's not filtering anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Clam filters basically 24/7 unless the water's bad. And then a clam, say we get a tropical storm that comes in, dumps in 15 inches of fresh water. A clam, our clams, we call them super clams. They came from the most nasty water you could think of in Mosquito Lagoon, whether it be high oxygen, low oxygen, high salinity, low salinity. But we got a tropical storm, like I said, it comes in, drops a ton of rain. A clam can basically, you ever heard the old term clam up? A
Mm-hmm.
clam can clam up and dig underneath the mud and stay there until the water's basically good, and where it won't kill them, where their salinity basically comes back enough where they can feed. They can stay. Our clams have lived for 2 weeks without feeding.
Wow.
And once they come out, they can start feeding. And they test it every once in a while. They'll stick it up. No, it's not right yet. They go back down and they wait. An oyster has to feed, and once an oyster opens up and the water's not right, it kills an oyster bed. That's why an oyster bed can get wiped out overnight with a hurricane.
Wow.
But a clam
So
a clam can live.
so with the clams and the oysters, like in your area, you'll have them obviously living in the same area. How do they work together? Because they got to be able to work together. Like you're saying that the clams do this, but the oysters do that. A lot of times, like that makes for a good relationship between two um, kind of organisms.
Actually, they're competing for the same food source. They're eating the same algae, so they're really not competing. They compete for space, I guess you would look
Hmm.
at it. But back when I was a kid, we had oyster beds around the islands, and we would get oysters and clams right next to each other. So,
Hmm.
and some of the clams we'd get as the giant ashtray size clams we used to
Wow.
call them. I mean, they
How
were
long does
they
it
were
take for
huge.
one to get that big, you think?
30 to 35 years is
Wow.
usually about the size, and then they'll live up to 300-400 years. I think a clam is the oldest living animal in the world right now,
Really?
or that's ever been,
Wow.
like 300, 500 years. It's pretty funny.
And
It's
that's when they get the super size, like
no,
those giant
actually
clams, or
actually no, it's a quahog clam that's about yay big. It's not one of the giant
something like
clams.
okay, that's cool. And then so your project started. Your first clams that you put in. What year was that?
That was in 2019.
Okay, so 2019. So 30 years from that could be 2049, and you could be having those size again.
Well, the super clams are kind of proving us a little bit wrong because they're growing like wildcats. And some of our clams now are actually this big, and we started them off as little dime-sized clams. So they're growing pretty big,
Wow.
very quick. The ones that are 5 years old now are pretty good sized clams. I mean, bigger than the clam you'd want to eat.
So when you were first talking, you were saying that it was important that you get the clams from, the natural clams.
Hmm.
And is that still what's going on, or is this a different type of clam that you're talking
It's
about that's growing faster?
it's all from the same genetic clams, same genetics that we're using from the first ones that we found.
Wow.
So it's
And
just
so
they're
any reason
offspring all
that
the way down.
they would be growing faster?
Well, I guess the only reason that we're looking at is because the generations. I mean, you can't really do it there. Yeah, I guess we can. What we do when we first spawn the clams is we kind of put them in a grater, just like you're, sifting for gold. And what it does, the smaller clams will drop through, the bigger, faster growing clams will stay up. And we did that for the first few plantings that we did, so we'd only get the fastest growing clams out of the whole. I think it was 8 million that was first spawn. So 350,000 of those was our first release, something like that. And they were the fastest growing clams that we had. And
Wow.
I would say that could be one factor is why they're growing fast. Another is that the river's got a lot of algae in it that needs to be filtered out, and they're just growing very fast because of all the algae.
Yeah, I guess that could be a factor. Like what we were talking about with the clarity of the water and the health of the water when you were a kid. Obviously, there's a lot more for them to eat.
Yep,
Like with where we are today,
yep,
and
and
that's kind of a good thing or a bad thing. I guess it's a good thing for the clams to grow fast and they'll filter more. Well, I guess that's a question that I need to ask: is a bigger clam? It seems like it would be logical to think that that would filter, 100 times more than a little clam, a hundredth of its size.
yep.
But is that the case or not?
The bigger the clam, the more that they'll filter. What we found though over the years though that the bigger clams don't necessarily produce more eggs. Usually a clam in its first 3 years is the most fertile, should we
Hmm.
say?
Yeah. Um, okay. So how is the kind of has the community embraced this? Have you had any opposition to this project? What's the challenges been so far?
Um, th- there's naysayers to everything you do out there. I got guys that have told me you're just feeding fish out there, and right now, yeah, we do feed a lot of fish when we're spreading 8 million clams at a time, and they're the size of a pinhead. But like I said before, we get a 13% to 17% survival rate with those clams, rather than a 70% survival rate of 350,000. So I'd much rather have a fish feeding frenzy every now and then and have a lot more clams survive that way. But that's the naysayers that are out there. But everybody that I talk to, and what's funny is I'll ask people. I say, it's been a few years since Addictive Fishing's been on. I'll say, well, you ever seen Addictive Fishing? I've heard about it. What about Blair Wiggins Outdoors? And no, haven't heard. How about the Indian River Clam? Oh yeah, I know about that. So it's definitely getting out here to the locals that there is projects going out there to help the river, and I think everybody's getting pretty educated about it. I'm seeing a lot less bright green lawns out when I cruise Cocoa Beach, and I'm in the back canals of Satellite Beach. I see a lot more natural vegetation people are planting, and it's usually when somebody first moves in, they'll their grass will be all green, and everybody I guess gives them, hey, you need to cut that out
Yeah.
because
Well, that's what it'll take, right?
yeah, it's
Is
exactly what it does.
as opposed to an HOA that says you need to make sure that your lawn looks beautiful and green and encouraging that, because I'm sure that was happening for a while. It was going the other way, that people were being encouraged to have a beautiful lawn and a green lawn and take care of their grass and make sure that their garbage cans are pulled in on the right day or whatever.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
so that's
a few drone shots of milky water coming out of the Satellite Beach Grand Canal a couple of times. Usually curbs people's thoughts on, what goes into the water in the canal systems.
well, that sure does seem like the biggest challenge to overcome is you have a lot of people that live in Florida that aren't necessarily fishermen, or even get on the water. and they move there because of the of it's warm, right? And
Hmm.
so they want to move down there. Maybe the place that they're moving from, it was winter for most of the year. They didn't have a chance to have a lawn. They come down there. That's one of the things that they kind of want. Like, I want to do some yard work. I want to live in the, in Florida and have this lawn, until they are educated that maybe that's not the best thing. And when you do that, all the stuff that you're moving to Florida for, you're putting in peril.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of people that are, and talks that we do, just what can we do to stop fertilizer and what like that. And there's talks of people saying, well, if we ban fertilizer use from, east of I-95, and that would run all the way up because everything pretty much east of I-95, it runs down a ridge. Everything east of 95 runs to the east and it goes into the river. Everything west kind of goes into the St. John's around here or up north. It still runs to the west and to the east, but we're trying to get it, and it would be the perfect thing to do on 70 I-75 up and down on the west coast as well. Ban fertilizer use because I mean you're living right there on the coast, and you get a rainstorm. What do you got to do? You got to fertilize right after the rain because it just washed everything right through the sand, and
Mm-hmm.
then it rains again the next day. You got to fertilize again. And the worst thing you could do if you do fertilize is the time release stuff because that washes into the river and just time releases the whole time. It doesn't dissipate. It stays in the water. It's bad.
Wow, that stuff. Yeah. So, do you think that that would be a challenge to get something like that passed?
Um, all it, unfortunately, and I hate to say this, but it took a few dead manatees to get people's eyebrows raised around here when they started starving to death. And finally, it raised a lot of eyebrows, but I'd hate for it to take a few more dead manatees and dolphins to pass laws. Do it before it happens because it's going to happen. I mean, we screamed about stuff going on that's happening now 10 years ago. So
Mm-hmm.
they just need to listen and do it now.
So, what's the education process? I mean, is that part of the clam restoration project, and the stuff that you're doing is also education outreach on why it's necessary, and maybe bringing in fertilizer and all of those other things that you're putting on your lawn or down your drain, how important that is as well? Is
I,
that part of the project?
I always push my project, but I also push everybody else's project out there because, as we say, the river up here is dying from 1,000 cuts. We're just one band-aid right now that's trying to help, heal the river. There's a lot more projects out there that I support and that I wish I had time to give, my time to do it. But with the Clam project and everything else that I do have going on, it's hard to spread your time. But um, there's reef projects out there. There's oyster projects. There's other clam projects that go on locally now. Grass restoration, all up and down the coast. But and also just people doing cleanup and education seminars. So all you got to do is go, sign up for one, and you will learn. If you want to learn about a seminar, the Chat GPT, there you go, is a perfect way to use it. If I say, where can I go learn about how to clean up the Indian River? And a lot of times you'll get a response saying, hey, you can learn about it here or go to this website. You can go to my website, the Indian River Clam Restoration Project.org, and everything that basically I've talked about from clams pooping in the water to, them putting it on the bottom of the seafloor for shrimp to come up and eat. We actually have video of that happening. And there's a lot to learn about that, and it's amazed me, and it's basically been a dream coming true for me because I saw so many clams coming out when I was just a fishing guide up here. I'd do 300 trips a year up here when I was guiding before the show, and just watching all the clams. They used to park 18 wheelers at the ramps, the refrigerated trucks, and I'm sure they were checking everybody's license when they were dropping the clams off and making sure that they were legal to be selling clams. They dealt in cash there a lot.
Wow.
But like I mentioned this earlier, there was an estimate of 9.2 billion clams that came out of the Indian River estuary up here, and I think it was a little more than that because there was a lot of under the table stuff that wasn't checked, it wasn't recorded, and You know, but I'll be the first to tell you I was a guilty party of it. Once in a while, I'd jump on one of my buddy's boats, and he'd give me a few dozen clams to take home and eat when I was a fishing guide. So, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if there was, oh, I don't know, 10,000 clammers out there on the water any given day, 10,000 clammers do that for their next door neighbor. That's a lot of clams that go unchecked.
Sure.
So,
Sure. How do they harvest clams at that level? Like
um,
back then, how would they harvest them?
they did it with a lot of the boats out there did it with giant clam rakes. They're 30. Let's see if I can get. They're super long. They're like 38 inches long, 39 inches long. They weighed like 15, 20 pounds. They had these giant spikes that came down into the mud, and they would have the wind push them across the flat. And basically, 6 to 8 foot of water, and they would sit there, raise the rake up, shake the mud, and they would do it in a rhythm, basically, where they would tear up a flat. I can't tell you how much seagrass, you'd see floating every single day. But a lot of people don't think about bycatch when it comes to clamming. Here's another factoid for you. Um, they had those big rakes that they're going across the bottom with. What's on the bottom? You have spider crabs, horseshoe crabs, blue crabs, invertebrate, all sorts of stuff that take care of rotten flesh and stuff on the bottom that you don't want on the bottom. They eat that stuff, and with everything that they're killing down there, all the little the worms and the starfish. We used to have starfish here too, brittle stars. They're breaking those things up. That's not there to break down all that bacteria there. So we got Vibrio in our river up here, and I never had Vibrio up here when I was a kid.
What is that
Um, the,
for?
the Vibrio, it's the bad flesh eating bacteria.
Right.
Never heard about Vibrio cases here because if we had Vibrio here as a kid, I would have it. No doubt, I would have got it because
Just surfing and fishing and
surfing. There
everything.
wasn't. I think between second grade and eighth grade, there wasn't a time I didn't have stitches in my body somewhere. That's no lie. I was on a first name basis with the nurses at Cape Canaveral Hospital, stepping on oysters, falling down, cut, just anything, But yeah, but if, like I said, if it was here when I was a kid, I'd have had it. I'm sure I would have because I was wading around in the mud, casting for mullet and canal systems, but I wouldn't do it now.
So what does that
Def-
do to you, the Vibrio, if you get that? Like, is that flesh-eating bacteria? Is that what that is?
Yeah, it's the worst flesh-eating bacteria you can get. I don't know if you knew John Bowman up here, Boudreaux.
I didn't
Uh,
know.
he had a radio show up in Orlando, Florida, fishing. Oh, fishing Florida. Fishing Florida Radio is what it's called. Is what
Okay.
it's called. And yeah, he was out. He got it in Louisiana. He was out for a class reunion. Went out fishing. Uh, I think came home the next day. Within 3 days, he was laying in the hospital. Fourth day, he wasn't there.
Man, I heard about that. Something else. It happened in Louisiana too. A guy got what he thought was a I guess a fish spine in his hand,
Hmm.
and he did really badly with it. It was real bad. Like I don't think it killed him, but it came real close.
I almost
Real
lost one of my fingers to one called it's a step above Vibrio. It's called Microbacteria marinum, and you get it. It's some fish ick, and you get it on your digits if you get stuck by a fish. And it swelled up. It was pretty nasty, but I finally got a doctor that knew what it was and got rid of it.
I had something like that too in the Keys, and it was a mutton snapper about this big, like just big enough to where you don't you grab it like a regular snapper, like just big enough to where you can get your kind of fingers under its belly, and you can just get this little gap in your thumb over the back, like not a big one, like a little mutton snapper, but a fish that's big enough to where it's hard to hold them. And that first dorsal, they have a very short little first dorsal, and it
Hmm.
got me right in the in this line on your thumb right there. And I remember it stinging, and it stung, and I thought, man, I think you broke a spine off in my thumb. And I've never had another one do that, but it like stung, like really stung. And then later that afternoon, my hand started swelling up, and lucky I had a doctor that I fished with all the time, and I called him and I was like, "Man, this happened to my hand," and he's like, "Dude, that's a bacteria, and you need to get to Fort Lauderdale tomorrow morning, first thing, cancel your trip, get up there. And I was like, I think that's, I think he's overreacting. But I did what he told me to, and he got me to a hand specialist up there. And the guy was ready to cut my hand open and irrigate it out and do all this stuff. And I was like, could we try something before we do that? And he's like, man, I'll give you this badass, um, antibiotic. And if you're not noticeably better in 24 hours, you're coming back and we're going to cut your hand open. And luckily it worked. But
Yeah.
there is no messing around with that stuff. I mean, like you
Nope.
said, it killed that guy, and and it is really, really bad news. I don't know where that comes from.
It's it
Why is that there?
it's I couldn't tell you.
Just poor water quality?
I don't know if it's poor water quality. It's just it's the temperature of the water that stays a certain temperature for a while. But Louisiana's was the first place I ever heard about it.
Hmm.
Actually, my old fishing partner, the Redfish Trail, he got it and it took half his calf away.
What?
He just had a fish, redfish he slung in the boat and it hit him in the calf. 3 days later, he was in the hospital. They were ready to take, like you said, everybody to take his leg off, but they took his calf off and irrigated it real good. And he was on liquid antibiotics. And yeah, he almost lost his leg.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
so
horrible. Um, well, hopefully that doesn't get worse. It gets better with. I would think that is like the temperature and also some enhancement to the water that we're somehow
oh
doing.
yeah.
Fertilizer, algae blooms, something I don't know,
I've heard
sewage.
that Vibrio is the same bacteria that gets in an oyster when you eat the oyster and it makes you really really sick or kills you.
Hmm,
So
just an intestinal version of that.
yeah, but it's
Well,
supposedly the same bacteria. So it's
I
pretty
don't think I
nasty
want
bacteria.
either one. So let's get back to this clam harvest and the way that they were doing that. That sounds tremendously destructive to the environment. And
Very.
what's the status of the clam fishery? Like when the water turned black and the clams all died, do the clammers just go out of business? What happens? What happened to the fleet of 10,000 clammers a day?
Most of those, when I first started guiding, here's a little story factoid for you. Another one. When I first started guiding, there was like 7 clam boats, and that was in '92. I think I started. There was like 7 clam boats in the whole area here: Mosquito Lagoon, Indian River, Banana River. When the clam industry basically crashed here in 2009, there were 10,800 clammers in the areas or
What?
more, or more. That was just, I know there was more than 10,000 that were covering all the Space Coast from Mosquito Lagoon to Sebastian. I mean, any given day, if you were here on the water in the '90s, and you were on the Space in the Indian River, you had to literally weave in and out of the boats in the river because of so many clammers.
And
There
they're
were
all doing that with the same method of the big rakes.
Not some of them had tongs where you see them out there with tongs, and that's just as bad. They crunch the horseshoe crabs. Here's a little story. The guy's boat I used to jump on and grab up some clams from every day. He's dead now, so I can tell this story. I jumped on his boat one day, and he had like 40 horseshoe crabs in his boat. And I'm like, "What are you doing with those horseshoe crabs?" He's like, "Well, I'm finally getting them under control now. That's only 40 or 50 I got today instead of 1,000."
What would he do with them?
Throw them on land somewhere and kill them so they didn't get in his clam rake.
Huh.
And 10,000 clammers out there once again doing that. And like I said, not everybody out there doing the tongs or the rakes. A lot of them were out there, just I knew guys that were wading off the causeway and swimming across the intercoastal with a big wash pail and just out there on the spoil islands getting clams with their feet.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot different than 10,000. So what would have happened for 7 clam boats to turn into 10,800? Did I mean, what did the popularity of clams just soar, or the price of clams, or
No,
something?
we had well and we'll refer back to Maryland again, where I found out about a clam restoration project. The clam industry up there crashed. New England
Okay.
clam chowder.
Mm-hmm.
They were getting their clams from here in Texas and Louisiana, but this was the largest clam bed in the southeastern United States at one time, and everybody heard about it. It was like the wild wild west, and people came here and pontoon boats and inner tubes and everything they could get out there and get clams out of. I mean, it was wild. I mean, literally people parking on the side of the road, wading across on the intercoastal, and when they got all the clams that were there on the causeway, they started swimming across the intercoastal with big wash pails with inner tubes around them and getting clams that way. And they would make trips. They would literally fill a 55-gallon wash tub up 8, 9, 10 times a day by swimming across. I was, they're making
Wow.
1,500 to 2,000 bucks a day cash.
Wow. Yeah. No boat. I don't have it. I don't have to have it. Just a car and a cooler,
Yep.
probably.
Pull up to the 18-wheeler at the ramp and say, "Here's my clams. Where'd you get them? Right out there. Okay, here's your money."
Wow.
That's
And
about how
somebody's
it
making
was.
2 grand a day like that.
Yeah.
And back then, that's worth a lot more than 2 grand a day today.
Yeah.
Um,
That's 6 or 8
so
today.
yeah, and so blue sky it and tell me where this clam restoration project's going. If could you have imagined that you would be where you are today, a few years ago, and where do you think you're going in the next 5 years with this?
Well, I think that the clam restoration project's got its legs now, and it's working on its own. It's got a lot of partners out there, especially with the drone operator that we got now, and with Todd Osborne in charge of that, of basically the whole program. He kind of sets up where we need to put them out, when, and he'll ask me, "How's this area look? How's that area look?" And I'm like, "That's great." I was just the guy that got everybody together. He's the brains behind it. I can say I'm just a fisherman behind it, and saw what was happening and was able to get everybody together to make it happen. I see it, like I said, have its own legs now, and hopefully there'll be a day that they'll say, "Hey, we don't need you clamming it. We don't need your clams anymore." But if we get into the point where we start harvesting and bringing those nutrients back out with clams, we'll still have to put clams back in those areas. So I never really see it going away, especially with more population that comes in. We're going to have more problems. What I do see a problem with is if we don't control the salinity up here somehow and keep it above 11 parts per thousand, every project that we got going on up here is going to die. From
It,
seagrass to oysters to clams.
so how do you do that? Like, what's changing
That
the salinity? Is it
That's what we need to figure out, because there's so many more rooftops and parking lots and roads around here now that we get a rain shower. Our salinity might be perfect one day, and we get 4 inches of rain the next day, and it's done. And if we say we have like our regular rain showers for a week, and then we get a tropical storm or even a hurricane on top of that, it's going to take a lot longer for 2 weeks for our salinity to get back right, and we'll lose a lot of clams, if not all of them, if that happens.
So
So
explain. There's some people that are not from Florida, maybe some freshwater listeners. The salinity you're seeing, and this can be even more confusing to somebody that's not super familiar with the state of Florida and the different water issues. But in some parts of Florida, we talk about the salinity, and it's way too high, like around Flamingo and the Florida Keys area, because it's not getting the fresh water that it once did. Other places, the fresh water is being routed in unnatural, unhistoric ways to certain areas, and there's way too much fresh water in your area. Can you explain why you're having a salinity issue with all the different runoffs and the tropical storms and stuff? Tell us what happens there that changes the salinity.
Well, just like you said, they channel the water off what used to be pasture land or farmland. They build houses on it now. It doesn't get a chance to basically percolate back through and come into the river naturally. It all rushes in at one time, and the salinity just drops. And a true brackish environment, it's a mix between that saltwater and freshwater environment that's around anywhere from 11 parts per thousand all the way up to, say, a 27, 28 parts per thousand, and that's parts per thousand to salt, and that's the little scale. But when it drops below 11 parts per thousand, that's when shellfish really start to take a hit and die. The fish, some fish can deal with it, other fish can't. But they'll head to deep water where the water's a little heavier and a little more salty sometimes. But it just it needs to be controlled because, like I said, with the more fresh water that we got coming in, we would need to bring in some salt water to counteract the fresh water that's coming in, so it doesn't get too fresh. And you need to be able to cut it off so it doesn't get too salty and become a more of salt environment where you get the invasive stuff that comes in, like the big orange starfish that would come in here on a good salty environment and devastate a clam bed or an oyster bed. But with our environment, it fluctuates, goes up and down so quick. And Mosquito Lagoon was a perfect example of it here recently. The past few years, we had a couple of breaches up there when we had storms, and it dumped in billions of gallons of nice fresh seawater. And what happened up there, we had a nice seed event, but the rhizomes for all the grass was basically dead or eaten by manatees. So what we had was a seed event. All the seed from the seagrass, the shoal grass, was in a perfect saltwater environment at 37 parts per thousand. It blossomed and bloomed, and there was seagrass everywhere in Mosquito Lagoon. It was a perfect environment. And now it's starting to wean down, come down a little bit, or it did, and then we had another breach, and it came back again, and now it's starting to wean down again. That's happened for thousands of years up and down the Space Coast here, and since they basically paved and made A1A from Port Canaveral all the way down to Sebastian in this area, we haven't had a breach to dump in that good fresh seawater. So that keeps the balance. If as long as you keep having breaches and they'll seal back up, it was keeping the salinity at a certain level. Now there's no breaches. We need to figure out how we can keep that salinity the way it used to be done by Mother Nature before we screwed it up.
Do you have ideas? Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Well, I
I've
mean,
got.
what kind of ideas do we have to do that?
Well, there's been some studies done about culvert pipes coming in, and basically, flooding in certain times when we see rainstorms coming, kind of just like they do in Okeechobee when they think there's a hurricane coming. They dump a lot of fresh water because they're fixing to get a bunch of fresh water. If we dumped in a bunch of seawater coming in, it's not going to hurt anything. It's going to make it a little salty for a while, but it's not going to hurt anything if we dump in some seawater and make it a lot more salty. Might make the water a little higher, but
Interesting. What's the mechanism that the water would flow in? Does it have to be pumped or just the tide?
Well, that's the studies that we got to do. Could it be done just with flow, or is we got to create a job where somebody has to basically be there and punch a button at high tide, or it's constantly taking readings on water to see when we do need to dump in. And believe it or not, clams can be a perfect example of that. They use clams in freshwater to control dams. They basically, when a clam's open, the water's nice and clean, and he's filtering, constantly filtering. When the clams close, something's wrong with the water because something's bad, and they'll bury themselves, or they close. I forgot exactly how it is, but they'll close, and the dam closes up.
Wow.
I have that on my website. It's a cool study that they do. You see the clams operate, and they're controlling, billion-dollar dams. Hydro.
That's crazy.
It's neat.
That is super cool. And
I
so maybe they could do that with the salinity. Is what you're saying? Also,
possibly. Yeah, because when the salinity gets too bad, a clam's not going to want to filter in too much fresh water.
Right. I would think that the biggest men would.
Believe it or not, that might be what we could use oysters for.
Really?
Because
how would you do that?
Well, oyster's a lot more delicate than a clam. If a clam senses bad water, it's going to stop immediately feeding. But a clam
so
might
what would an oyster do?
Basically stop it. It'll close up and clam up like a clam, but it stays in the water column. It won't come up, and it'll crack a little bit to test, crack a little bit.
Oh, I see. I see what you're saying. You're saying that the clam will go down and just wait. Yeah. And the water might have turned good, but they don't even bother to check. Like they're good. Like something that can hold its breath for a long time. Like just go down and hold on, and then come up and take a breath later, or come up and test the water later. Where an oyster is going to continually be checking to see if it's good or not. that'd be amazing to be able to use clams like that.
But
I
they're
would love to
actually
see that dam thing that you're
yeah,
talking
they're
about.
actually it's on the Indian River Clam Restoration page. I wish I could punch it up. I'm on my
Well,
computer
we'll
now.
put that in there. It's actually the page is called Indian River Clam Restoration Project.org.
Yeah,
Is that right?
irlproject.org.
Okay, so irlproject.org. In case you're interested in going there and checking it out, I'm definitely going to look at that. And that's fascinating. But what would really be fascinating is if it could figure out how to use the tide, the natural flow of the water, to as opposed to any sort of another dam, another pump, another something, like just use the moon and the gravitational pull
Yeah,
to, and then just open or close. That's all. That would be interesting. So is that
but
the
they would have to be able to, and you got to do your calculations out there because if you turn it too salty, it'll become too salty of an environment, more of a ocean environment instead of a brackish water environment.
right? Well, I mean,
So that
that's what we're dealing with, like in Flamingo and in
exactly,
that area, is that, um, we've shut the freshwater flow off that used to percolate through the Everglades and naturally just kind of slowly go in, and that has been cut off by dams and roads and dikes and ditches and other things, and it gets way too salty, oftentimes,
yeah,
and that can be just as much of a problem as way too fresh,
yeah,
right? You've changed the natural salinity of an area, and that's not going to be good. But then you have another area where, like an area that we're familiar with, like the Mississippi River and the Mississippi River Delta, that ebbs and flows and changes all the time. And like that was one of the biggest lessons I had to learn going up there and fishing with the boys from Louisiana, is like they were fishing the salinity of the water, which was completely foreign to me, probably not to you being from where you were, but from the Keys, salinity of the water. Yeah, it's salty. It's always salty. Like we have no fresh water coming in to speak of. I mean, maybe a spring here or there, but the water it's the ocean, right? Like this
yeah.
is always salty. And so you're saying that now, in addition to the tides, learning my way around, fishing for, in somebody else's backyard, now I'm also going to have to learn how to fish the salinity. Like that was, and to them, it was just second nature. I mean, they just taste the water and be like, not
Oh yeah,
here.
too
Nope.
salty. Yeah, I got to
Yep.
learn to
Not doing
taste the
it
water
here.
out there a little bit.
I was just like, oh my God, we're never going to win anything if this is what we do. Um,
You got to do what I did. Spend a couple of months out there and live with some of the coon asses out there and become good friends with them. And oh yeah, you learn all the
I
little
did.
tricks.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
I did
did.
exactly that with Anthony Randazzo, and we learned a lot. We learned a lot. Some of the things I'm not sure I needed to learn, but I did learn a lot about Louisiana. So when we were talking at ICAST, you were saying that maybe you have a future project that you could maybe talk about. Is that the water quality project? Is that what we were just discussing? Is what you're
Yeah,
talking about?
yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was talking about because and I think it's actually bigger than the Clam project or any of the projects out there altogether because, it's going to take one big rain event and, all this money that we're throwing at the clams, throwing at oysters, throwing at the trying to fix it. I strongly feel if we don't control the salinity somehow, and all the scientists agree with me, so.
Well, I mean,
They can
I
put it,
agree with
and
you
they can
too.
put it
Just
in scientific terms.
unlike the Clam project, where you did not have a lot of other places to look and get information from. There are plenty of places, even just in the state of Florida, where you can look at water quality and too much salinity and too much fresh. And we've had a history of that. Like, and the Captains for Clean Water has done a great job of bringing that attention to a lot of those issues and kind of educating people on that, along with many, many other groups that have done a great job with that too. But there are places where we can see clearly what happens when it gets too fresh and clearly what happens when it gets too salty. But no one has come up with a great solution. The reservoir outside of Okeechobee is a great solution, but it just continues to kind of seem to be stalled a little bit. Like, I don't know. That's a major undertaking too. It would be great to find something that wasn't quite the undertaking of that giant EAA reservoir
Yeah,
that can fix it.
I have been seeing the post and the arguments and the clashes going on with that online. That's a mess.
With the reservoir.
Yeah.
And so, what are you
Oh, well,
seeing
not
in
really the
that?
reservoir, the rock mine.
Oh, well, yeah, the rock mine. Yeah,
That's what I'm seeing.
that is, it's just I don't know. I'm watching that too, and even as familiar with all of these different projects and different problems as we are, it still seems like, why do they want to do that? I mean, why do they want to do that mine, the rock mine? I mean, obviously something's incredibly valuable there to want to
Yeah.
do it right there, and but it just seems like, man, can't we just learn our lesson? Like, look what's happened so many other times when we've damaged this area to a point that it has a downstream effect of for every for everything. I don't know why. Hopefully that I don't know. Hopefully we can stop that one. I think that would
Yeah.
be good
That's a
in my opinion.
that's a big one. But
That is a big one. Okay, so I want to kind of bring this full circle, and you've done a really incredible job with the clams. You've brought in 96 million in a fairly short period of time. You have started kind of a movement, gotten a lot of other people around you, including some great partners. I mean, do you want to bring up any of your partners that have been instrumental in this?
I would love to, but I don't want to leave anybody out.
Right.
You know how that is.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll refer everybody to the web, and that'll get hopefully people to go to the website and check it out and learn a little bit more about clams. But the initial partner and everybody that got this thing all rolling together was CCA. Without Lisa Fitzgerald and her getting everybody together, that first meeting, it wouldn't have happened without them. So and then they brought in a lot of people, and a lot of people have come in. You know, just a lot of people. If I start naming off, I'm gonna have to go to my website, and then it's gonna get
Well, no,
boring because I'm gonna
you
read
definitely
it
don't
off.
want to
But
leave anybody out. So we'll encourage people to go to irlproject.org or Indian River Clam Restoration Project.org and check that out for yourself. So let's finish this up with a few questions. So we'll make the first one really easy. What's one piece of gear that you always have in your boat?
oh, my phone,
Your phone.
my
Yeah,
phone.
and so does everybody else. But that is a pretty amazing piece of gear.
I mean, I do
Um,
make sure I have it with, Instagram and social media these days. I film something I've seen a million times, dude. A million times. I've caught a little tiny trout in my cast net. A million times. And I said, well, it'd be cool to put on. And all I did was I went like this, and I filmed a little trout, and I go, love seeing these little guys right here. One of my favorite fish, Indian River Lagoon, coming back. I let it go. Like overnight, I had 3,000 views on. I'm like, why couldn't this other video gotten that many views? Or
yeah.
why isn't this one blowing up? But yeah, so yeah, your phone these days. I mean, if you're in our position, that's got to be one of your doing Instagram and social media and all the stuff we take for granted out there, and that we can just blip and show somebody.
That's
I think
right.
that's a pretty cool piece of equipment.
Okay. So, if you were to think about, I know that we've talked about it, several wins, but as far as water quality, an exciting water quality win that you've seen firsthand.
Uh, Clams showing up in areas a half a mile to a mile away from areas where we put clams 5 years ago. So that
Nice.
tells me that our clam projects are definitely working, and new clam beds are being created every time they spawn. And also, I get emails from people that are finding clams in areas that I know there wasn't clams before.
That's super cool. That's really super cool. Um, okay, one thing that anglers can do tomorrow to protect their own fishery. So maybe they don't live where you do, and they're not going to participate in your project, but they're a fisherman that loves their area. Every area's got some kind of issues. What's a piece of advice that you could give someone to do tomorrow to protect their own fishery?
If I would say if you see somebody doing something wrong, don't scream at them. Don't, or they say they're keeping a fish and they don't know, so you want to make sure they're they know the law. And if you're able to say something to them and say, hey guy, that's not a time to keep this fish. Time to let it go. And if you don't know the law, because if you wait and call FWC, by the time FWC gets there, the fish is going to be dead. And in my opinion, that's protecting the resource right then. Sometimes you don't want to go up to people like that, though.
Yeah.
But there's so many things out there. Educate people on the area when they move here. It's everybody talks about how it used to be. I can go on and on that one.
Yeah.
Go
Okay.
on.
So we'll rephrase that question and say one thing that anglers can do tomorrow to help support what you're doing, to help support
Um,
the Clam project.
Become involved in a conservation project. It doesn't have to be my project. Become involved in a conservation project because we're all trying to help each other and you'll learn about other projects.
And then I would ask you, in your opinion, um, is there a difference between time or financial contribution or actually getting out there and picking up trash, or is involvement, or are there different levels to it?
There's definitely different levels of involvement. The CEO of a big company can't get out there, on the weekends. He might have to be working 70 hours a week to take care of his company. He can write us a check though.
Hmm.
He can write a check to any of the conservation products that go on out there. CCA captains, you guys, everybody out there can use donation. And if you love the environment, why not? If you want to keep the environment around, and if you don't have the type of funds to help out, everybody's always looking for volunteers. And like you said, time's way more valuable than any type of money out there, especially the older you get.
That's right. Okay, and so the CTA, the call to action here, um, to donate, volunteer, share, do whatever someone can do on any level to support what you're doing, or any of these other conservation groups, but particularly yours. How do they do that?
And I heard you say it. It's irlclamproject.org. I think
Yep,
you just said
IRL project is what
clam
you
pro.
said before.
Yeah,
Okay, so
.org.
irlclamproject.org. That's the right website.
Yep. And yeah, they can go there and learn how they can donate. There's a donate button right there. 100% of the proceeds go right to the Clam Project. I haven't even reimbursed myself a tank of gas yet in my time, and I want to see the river come back that bad. I don't need a paycheck from it. I'm doing everything that I can, volunteering. There's other people out there on a payroll that are out in the water every single day doing what I can't get out there and do. So, yeah.
Okay, and then what about your social media?
Social media, I'm on, most all the platforms out there. Instagram, TikTok. Actually got my TikTok shop going the other day.
Nice. Do you
But
do any dances?
no, I don't do it. Yeah, I do fish dances, or I let the fish do the dancing. But
Yeah, there you go.
it's all just promoting fishing and conservation and just doing what I do. Facebook is still going strong, and the TV show is too as well. We just
Yeah,
started
so
on
Blair Wiggins Project or Blair Wiggins Outdoors. Tell them where they can see that.
on FanDuel right now. We're airing some cool Alaska shows that we just got back from doing, and Waypoint TV, of course, will be on there for all year long, and all the social media sites. I think till the end of the year, we're on Discovery Plus as well.
Okay, cool. Discovery Plus. All right. Well, we'll put all that in the notes. And Blair, I want to thank you for being a great steward of your area, and certainly for the state of Florida. You're really leading by example, and that is to be commended. I've always looked up to you, and I'm really happy to see what you're doing with the state of Florida and the Clam Project, the IRLclamproject.org. That's what we've been talking about the whole time. Definitely go there and check that out, and check out his show too. If you're not familiar with Addictive Fishing, that one was a super classic, but Blair Wiggins Outdoors is the follow up, and it is on now. So check it out on FanDuel and Waypoint TV. But thanks for being here, Blair. I really appreciate it. And thanks for your leadership and your stewardship.
I appreciate it, Tom. Anybody that's ever fished up in this area, especially years ago, know what it was like. We're just trying to bring it back a little bit to what it was. And if you caught our first show this year, we were in Mosquito Lagoon, and I saw something I haven't seen there in 25 years, and that was a school of redfish and their tailing. I mean, there was 20 fish in there, and they were all just, I mean, they were happy. We must have filmed them for 20 minutes. It was cool.
That's so awesome.
But yeah, Indian River Clam Project. Oh, excuse me, Indian River Clam Restoration Project.org. Please go there and check out and learn about clams, or get involved in any kind of a restoration project out there that you can, and help out. Every place around Florida needs Band-Aids on the water right now.
We certainly do. All right, Blair, thanks again. We'll be back with another great guest, just like Blair Wiggins. Well, not just like Blair Wiggins. He's a legend. He's a one and only. So we'll be back with another awesome guest. Not like Blair, but another awesome guest doing their part to continue the awesome fishing that we have in the state of Florida and other places. So that's it for today. We'll be back later. Share this with a friend if you liked it. All right, see ya.